This is the first in a series of tutorials called Train Your Piano Brain. In them, I'm going to deal with a problem that you might have come across as a piano learner. Learning the theory of how to do stuff on the piano is, relatively speaking, easy. What's hard is getting your fingers to do exactly what you want them to. That's because when you start to learn the piano, you're developing new brain circuitry that kind of controls your fine muscle movements and your senses of things like pitch and timing and rhythm. Your brain basically has to restructure, to rebuild itself to handle playing the piano. So in these sessions, we're going to be helping it to do that. We're going to be training your piano brain to make you a better, faster piano learner. Okay, this first session starts with an email from one of my subscribers, Sean. Sean's been watching the tutorials I made ages ago about blues piano. Okay, if you haven't seen them, just expand the description underneath this tutorial and you'll find a link. Now Sean writes, in those blues tutorials you start with some pretty complex syncopated rhythms just on a single note, but it's really difficult to break down what you're doing. Can you tell us more about swinging rhythms, please? Now Sean's got a good point. If you're a beginner jazz or blues pianist, learning to improvise rhythms can be hard. But that problem is also an opportunity. Learning the timing and the control you need for swing and syncopation is great for building those mental piano muscles. So with that in mind, I've created this little game for you to play. It has 5 stages which I want you to think of as levels. Before you can move up a level, you have to be able to play the level you're on confidently. Here we go. Level 1 is easy. It just uses 2 notes an octave or 2 octaves apart. Now, any note will do, but I'm going to use 2 C's. Start off by playing them to a regular beat like this. Not too fast, not too slow, okay? If you like, you can use a metronome or a metronome app to keep yourself in time. Now after a little while, we're going to start playing a very, very simple swing rhythm in the right, like this. If you're really new, do it for a while. If those 2 C's get boring, as they might, feel free to play a little pattern in the right hand, maybe something like this. Okay, but what's most important is mastering the timing and the rhythm and the slightly different things that your 2 hands are doing. Level 2 is where we start to go a little bit freestyle. What I want you to do is think of a very short swinging rhythm. You can think of one of your own or maybe use one from a well-known jazz or blues number. I'm going to use this. Okay, I've borrowed that from the first line of the jazz song It Had to Be You, which was a big hit for Frank Sinatra. Okay, here it is again just on 1 note. Yeah, it's simple. Now what I'm going to do is run that rhythm in the right against my steady left hand, like this. Can you see how the hands are beginning to work across each other to create the cross rhythms there, yeah? Now if you find that a little bit difficult at first, really focus on your left hand and that underlying pulse, yeah? That needs to stay steady all the time. It doesn't matter if the pattern in the right gets a bit messed up, yeah? Really focus on the regularity of that left hand, okay? So remember you need to nail this level before you move on to the next one. Level 3 is to take that pattern you used in level 2, or whatever it is, and start improvising on it just a little bit, keeping everything still on the 1 note. Now at first you might only add a little bit of extra rhythm, okay? Maybe something like this. Okay, neither of those little rhythms that I improvised there were that different from the basic. okay? But as you get more comfortable, try to get more adventurous. Okay, slow down if you have to, okay? But make sure you're back up to speed by the time you finish the level. Remember that jazz and blues rhythms often work across the beat. Play around, experiment, kind of stretch notes out, squash them down, dig into your natural musicality, yeah? This is the level that might fry your brain a little bit if you're new. The good news is that if it feels like you are frying your brain, that means you're probably learning. That sort of, this is so hard feeling that you get is your brain kind of pulling up the floorboards and ripping out the old wiring and splicing in new bits to handle these new movements. Now you're at level 4, I want you to keep improvising in the right hand just as you were at level 3, sticking to that one note. But I want you to make the left hand a little bit more complex. The left hand I use for many of my blues tutorials goes like this. It's kind of a shuffle pattern. Okay, you can even, if you want, change the chord in the left. Okay, if you've gone through my blues tutorials, you'll see what I was doing there in the left hand was to play a full 12-bar pattern. Okay, if you struggle with the right at first, then go back and use the right hand patterns from levels 1, 2 and 3, starting with the really straight beat and going through the syncopation and then the simple pattern until you can build up and get the two hands working together. Finally, level 5 is kind of the boss level, if you like. This is where you start improvising on different notes in the right over the shuffle in the left. Okay, that's basically the point we get to at the end of the blues piano tutorial series. So if you need to work out which notes you can play, which obviously is kind of a whole subject in itself, go and check those tutorials out. Once you've kind of got to that stage, don't just stop practicing. You can try mixing things up a little bit more. Challenge yourself. What can you do? Okay, so have a go at using chords for levels 1 to 3. Or maybe putting a swing rhythm in the left too. Okay, there are loads of ways to extend this if you use your imagination. The great thing about the game is that for levels 1 to 3 or even 1 to 4, you don't even need a piano. You can do it anywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're tapping your hands or your fingers. You can do it on a tabletop, on your knees, on the sides of your legs. You can do it on the bus, in a meeting, pretty much wherever you like. Yeah, wherever you do it, it'll help to build those brain connections. You don't always have to be at the piano to do useful piano practice. Okay, so that's it for our very first Train Your Piano Brain session. I hope you found it useful. I'll be making a bunch more of these over the next few months, mixed in with my regular tutorials. If you did find it useful, remember to like, to subscribe, and maybe even hit the share button underneath the video and let other people know on Facebook and Twitter. Okay, see you soon.